Welcome in, everyone, to a deep dive into, well, letting go.
Letting go.
We're going to be looking at excerpts from Let Go and Let. And it's a really interesting book.
Yeah.
It's a collection of stories and jokes and reflections, all kind of centered around this idea of letting go, of like,
Right.
things that are weighing us down.
It's not your typical self-help book,
Right.
where it gives you a 5-step plan or
Yeah.
something like that.
It's not like that.
It's more like the author's kind of inviting you to look at the world through this new lens and to see the freedom that comes when you can let go of all those attachments.
I love that.
Yeah.
Shifting your perspective, not just,
Exactly.
like following a formula.
Yeah.
And he jumps right into it with this intriguing story about a man who calls himself nobody.
Right.
And he's like, I'm greater than the king.
I love that story.
Yeah.
It's such a powerful way to just introduce that idea of shedding those external identities. Like the labels that we cling to for validation. It's almost like, what if your worth isn't tied to
Right.
your job title or your achievements
Or how many followers you have on social media.
Exactly, or how much money you make.
Yeah. Yeah, it really hits home for me. I think I'm definitely someone who gets caught up in those external measures of success. So
Yeah.
it's a good reminder.
And then he connects that to facing your fears,
Right.
particularly the fear of the future.
Yeah.
Which is, it's so prevalent, I think.
Oh, for sure.
Our minds are constantly trying to predict and control what's going to happen.
Oh, yeah.
And that just creates so much anxiety.
Oh my gosh, I am so guilty of that. Like, my mind is just always racing.
Yeah.
Worrying about what's next.
It's that monkey mind.
It is. It is the monkey mind.
Yeah.
But the authors suggest that by releasing that grip on the future, we actually weaken the mind's hold over us.
Right. You're not giving it the fuel.
That's a pretty radical idea.
Yeah. It leads to that concept of now here.
Now here.
Which is about just being fully present, free from the weight of the past and the anxiety of the future.
But how do you even function like that?
Right.
Like, wouldn't that make me just passive in life?
Well, it's not about ignoring your responsibilities or pretending like the past doesn't exist, but it's more about approaching them from a place of presence, not anxiety. Think about how often do your worries about the future actually help you solve a problem?
Yeah.
They just keep you up at night.
Yeah. Worrying just keeps me stuck.
Exactly.
Okay, so now here is about
being present, not passive.
Being present, not passive.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. But how do we get there?
Right.
The author seems to suggest that our own minds are the biggest obstacle.
Yes, our own minds.
Yeah.
They describe the mind as this calculator that's constantly analyzing, judging, and creating problems where there might not even be any.
It's like that saying, I'm so busy looking for what I want that I don't see what I have.
Exactly. Yeah.
But if our mind is the problem, how do we escape that trap?
Right.
He even says that the mind creates our concepts of time and death.
Yes.
It's a pretty big statement.
It is. But the solution that they offer is meditation.
Okay.
And they present it as a way to transcend those limitations of the thinking mind.
So it's not just about emptying your mind.
It's not just a relaxation technique.
Right.
But it's about really shifting your consciousness.
It's about observing it without judgment.
Exactly. It's like taking a step back from that constant stream of thoughts and just noticing them without getting swept away.
Yeah.
And when you do that, you start to realize you're not your thoughts, you're the awareness behind them.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. To illustrate this, the author tells this funny story about a woman in the hospital, right?
Yes.
And she's waiting for surgery. And she keeps getting examined by all these different doctors.
Right.
But it turns out they were just painting the corridor.
Yeah, they were just painting the corridor.
Yeah, and she was completely oblivious.
I love that story.
And it's such a good story.
Because it really shows how our minds can get stuck in those repetitive loops. Fixated on a problem that may not even exist.
Right. And it's funny. But it also makes you think, how often are we missing the bigger picture?
Exactly.
Because we're so focused on our own internal trauma?
Yes.
It's when we're so focused on getting that promotion at work.
Right.
That we end up behaving in ways that we regret later.
Yeah.
That's the ego, wanting to win.
Yeah, the ego wants to win.
At all costs.
Yeah.
Even if it means compromising our values.
Exactly.
So meditation can help us detach from that.
It can help us detach from that ego-driven mindset.
Yeah, from that ego-driven mindset.
Yeah. And you know what else they talk about?
Whoa.
Laughter.
Laughter. Laughter.
Funny.
I mean, I love a good laugh.
Yeah.
But how does that help us let go?
Well, they talk about how laughter has this incredible power to release tension and to disrupt those rigid thinking patterns.
Okay.
It's like a mini vacation from the seriousness of the ego.
So next time I'm like overwhelmed, just remembering a funny story from this book could actually help.
It could be the key to shifting your perspective.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. And they even suggest that laughter is the highest peak of growth.
Wow.
A path to the divine.
Whoa.
And they tell some hilarious jokes, like the one about the chain letter that says, you send your husband to the top of the list.
Yeah.
You'll get thousands of men.
That one got me, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's also kind of like...
It makes you think.
It makes you think, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, life doesn't have to be so serious.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that leads into this really interesting connection they make between laughter, love, and freedom.
Okay.
They argue that you can't have true freedom without love, and true love requires freedom.
It's like that push and pull that we all feel.
Exactly.
We want connection, but we're also afraid of losing ourselves in those relationships.
Right, and they even talk about marriage being a potential cage for love. You know, they're not saying marriage is bad, but they're emphasizing the importance of nurturing both love and freedom in any relationship.
So it's about like finding that balance.
Yes, finding a balance
between intimacy and individuality.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And to illustrate this point, they share this story about a woman who goes to a policeman, and she's complaining about this man who's annoying her.
Yeah.
And the officer's watching the situation, and he says, well, he's not even looking at her. And she says, well, isn't that annoying?
It's so true, though.
It's so true. It's funny.
It's like we want to be seen, but we're also terrified of rejection.
Exactly.
So it's a delicate dance.
It is a delicate dance.
This is really making me rethink like how I approach relationships.
It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And on that note, we'll pause here for now. In part 2, we'll delve a little deeper into the author's idea about work as a form of worship.
Sounds good.
So stay tuned.
All right.
Welcome back to our deep dive into letting go.
Letting go.
In the last part, we were talking about laughter.
Yeah, laughter.
And love and freedom and all these great topics.
Such interesting connections.
Now, I'm really curious to explore this idea that work can be a form of worship.
Right.
Like that seems...
It's a different way of looking at it, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
I've definitely had jobs that felt more like a soul-crushing grind than a spiritual experience. So
I think we all have, right?
Yeah. So how does this work as worship idea actually work?
Well, he talks about approaching work with awareness and intention.
Okay.
And seeing every task as an opportunity to practice mindfulness.
Okay.
You know, and connecting with that present moment.
Right.
It's like you're transforming the mundane into the sacred.
That's really interesting. I like that. So there's this comparison he makes between the way we view work now, which is often very stressful, and the way it was viewed in more traditional societies.
Yeah, in more traditional societies, work was so integrated with community and ritual and purpose.
Yeah, it wasn't just about getting a paycheck.
No, it was about contributing.
It was about contributing
to something bigger than yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he uses these examples like cleaning, cooking, farming.
Yeah, any act.
To illustrate how...
when performed with mindfulness, becomes a form of prayer.
And that resonates with what we've been talking about, this idea that like spirituality isn't just confined to like specific practices or places. It's about bringing awareness and intention to everything we do.
Exactly.
So instead of like rushing through our to-do list, we can try to like find a sense of presence and purpose in each task.
Yeah, even if it's as simple as washing the dishes.
Yeah, even if it's like folding laundry, whatever it is.
Yeah, yeah.
But how do we make that shift?
Right.
It's easy to say, be present.
It is easy to say.
But, you know, our minds are so good at pulling us back into the past, into the future.
They are. It takes practice, you know, to cultivate that present moment awareness.
So meditation is a tool.
Meditation's a really helpful tool.
Yeah, for doing that.
Yeah, it's about training your mind to observe thoughts without judgment.
Okay.
Just like watching clouds drift by.
But then isn't there a danger of like becoming passive Or detached from life, if you're always just observing.
It's not about checking out of life.
Okay.
It's about showing up with more awareness.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that we're not our thoughts. We are the observer of those thoughts.
Right. And he uses that analogy of the teacher tying knots in a handkerchief.
Yes, I love that story.
Right.
And the student is like, how do we untie these?
Yeah, how do we untie them?
And the teacher's like, well, you need to understand how they were tied in the first place.
Such a good analogy.
Yeah, and it's a reminder that we need to look at the root cause of our problems. Not just the symptoms.
And in this case, the root cause of a lot of our suffering is the mind itself.
Yes.
It's the overthinking. It's the
worrying.
Worry.
It's the creating problems where there are none.
Yeah, and meditation.
Yeah.
Can help us to see those patterns.
It can help us see those patterns and then break free.
Oh, right. It's like when you're replaying a negative conversation.
Exactly.
In your head over and over.
You're just tightening those knots.
You're just tightening those knots.
Making yourself feel worse.
Making yourself feel worse.
Yeah.
So meditation is like...
It can help loosen them.
It can help loosen them.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's not some complicated technique.
Right.
He talks about cultivating a state of divine mindfulness.
Divine mindfulness. So that sounds pretty lofty.
It does.
Does that mean we have to become like monks or live in a cave to achieve that?
No, not at all.
Okay.
I think what he's getting at is this shift in consciousness.
Right.
That's available to all of us.
Okay.
It's about recognizing the divine spark that's within each of us.
Yeah.
And connecting with that deeper level of awareness that's always there.
I like that.
Yeah.
But he also talks about the ego.
Right.
As like this major obstacle to spiritual growth.
Yes. The ego.
And true freedom.
Yes. And he describes the ego as this balloon that inflates throughout our lives and creates this sense of separation from others, from the world around us.
Right.
It's like building walls instead of bridges.
And he outlines the different stages of ego development. From like the innocence of childhood to the anxieties of middle age.
To the anxieties of middle age, exactly.
And it makes you think about how like our experiences shape our sense of self.
They do.
And how the ego becomes this protective shell.
Right.
That keeps us from...
It can keep us from experiencing true connection.
Right. And sometimes that shell can feel pretty comfortable.
Oh, absolutely.
Even if it's keeping us trapped.
Yeah. It's that comfort zone.
It is. It is.
And he uses that story about the rebellious sparrow.
Oh, yeah. The one who refuses to fly south for the winter.
Yes. Refuses to fly south for the winter.
Yeah.
And almost freezes to death.
Almost freezes.
But then gets covered in cow dung.
Yeah, which keeps him warm.
Which keeps him warm, right?
He thinks he's found paradise.
He thinks he's in heaven.
Until the cat comes.
Until the cat comes.
And eats him.
And eats him.
Oh, that's such a good story.
It's a good reminder that mistaking temporary comfort for true freedom can have serious consequences.
It's like when we stay in a job we hate.
Yes.
Because it pays well.
Exactly. We're comfortable.
But are we really free?
But are we truly free? Yeah.
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 And that brings us back to this power of laughter.
Right. Laughter can help us puncture those inflated egos.
Okay.
And reconnect with that more playful, spontaneous way of being.
Okay. So it's about finding that playfulness.
Finding that playfulness.
Even in the midst of like challenges.
Yes, exactly.
And he uses these jokes, like the one about...
Oh, the one about the man who goes to hell?
The man who goes to hell.
And St. Peter says, give this guy his $1.50 back.
Yeah.
And tell him to go to hell.
Like what? I love that.
It's unexpected.
It's so unexpected.
Yeah.
Okay, so laughter is a tool for letting go.
It is a powerful tool.
Okay, and then he also talks about love and freedom.
Yeah, he makes this argument that you can't have one without the other.
Right, so it's about finding that balance in those relationships.
In those relationships, yeah.
Okay, so it's not about like merging into one.
No, it's not about losing yourself in the other person.
Right.
It's about allowing each person to flourish.
Right, and he says that marriage can be a potential cage for love.
Right, he's emphasizing the importance of nurturing both love and freedom.
So respecting each other's boundaries.
Yes, exactly.
Communicating openly.
Absolutely.
All of those things.
Yeah, and being willing to be vulnerable.
Right.
Yeah.
So this conversation has been, it's been really eye-opening in terms of like...
Yeah.
All the different ways that we can practice letting go.
Right. It's an ongoing process.
It is.
But it's a journey worth taking.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
So we'll take a pause here.
Okay.
And join us in part 3.
Right.
where we'll explore
Sounds good.
the author's final insights on letting go. All right, welcome back to the final part of our deep dive on letting go.
Letting go.
I'm really excited to see kind of where the author takes us in these last few excerpts.
Me too, yeah.
It feels like we've been on this journey, right?
It does. It feels like a journey.
Exploring laughter and love and freedom.
Yeah, so many important topics.
And I think one thing that has really struck me is this idea of, questioning everything.
Yeah.
Even our most deeply held beliefs.
Right.
And he tells this story about a sage who burns a wooden statue of Christ.
I love that story.
Right, to make a fire.
Yeah.
And the priest is like horrified.
Of course.
Right, and he's like, what are you doing? And the sage says, I'm looking for the bones of Christ.
What a great story.
Wow.
It's so powerful, right?
It really is. It's like
we can get so attached to our symbols and rituals that we lose sight of the essence of what they represent.
And that kind of brings us back to this whole idea of letting go.
It does. It all comes back to letting go.
Right. Letting go of those attachments.
Right.
Letting go of...
Letting go of our beliefs, even letting go of our sense of self.
Right.
And
he uses these metaphors like a river flowing to the ocean.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Or a gardener who learns to trust the natural process of growth.
The natural process of growth, exactly.
But I also really appreciate how he emphasizes questioning our thoughts.
Right, because our minds can create so many problems.
Our minds can create so many problems.
Oh, none exist.
And he compares the mind to a calculator.
Yes, the calculator.
Constantly churning and analyzing.
We're just churning away.
And making things more complicated than they need to be.
Exactly.
It's like when I get caught in that spiral of negative thinking.
Yeah, and it just makes you feel worse.
It just makes me feel worse, right?
Yeah.
And so he's suggesting that we can learn to take a step back.
Step back. Observe.
From those thoughts without getting swept away.
Exactly. Just notice them.
Yeah.
Without judgment.
And of course he reminds us about laughter.
Oh, always laughter.
Right. So
it's such a good antidote to that seriousness.
To that seriousness.
Of the ego.
He tells this joke about
oh, the one on the train?
The train?
Yeah.
The Jewish man?
The Jewish man, the monk, the nun.
The young girl?
And the young girl. Yeah.
And they go through a tunnel?
Yeah.
And you hear a kiss?
And a slap.
And a slap.
And then they come out of the tunnel.
And everyone's silent.
And everyone's silent, but everyone's thinking.
They all have their own interpretations of what happened.
Yeah, and they're all wrong.
And they're all wrong.
I love that one.
It's such a good one. And it's like...
It makes you laugh, but it also makes you think.
It does. It really does.
About how our minds jump to conclusions. Yeah.
Yeah.
And create stories.
Yeah. So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive, what are some key takeaways, you think?
Well, I think the biggest one is that true freedom is an inside job. It's not something we find in external circumstances,
right?
But it's something we cultivate within ourselves.
By letting go.
By letting go, yeah.
Letting go of all those things that are holding us back.
Yeah, the attachments, the fears.
It's fears.
The limiting beliefs.
The limiting beliefs, yeah. And I think the author has given us so many tools.
He has.
To help us on this journey.
Yeah, from meditation to laughter to mindful work.
To conscious
relationships. Absolutely.
It's like we've been given this toolbox.
We have.
And it's up to us to choose.
To choose the right tools.
The right tools.
Yeah.
And I love how he leaves us with this question.
What area of your life?
What area of your life
could benefit from a little bit of letting go?
Right.
What
are we holding on to that's no longer serving us?
Exactly. What would it look like to just release that grip?
That's a great question.
It is.
And I think that's a great place for us to end.
Yeah, I think so too.
This has been such a rich exploration.
It has.
And I hope our listeners are feeling inspired.
Inspired to keep going.
To keep going.
Yeah.
On this journey.
On this journey of letting go.
And to discover.
And to discover the freedom that lies within.
The freedom that lies within.
Yeah. It's been a pleasure diving deep with you.
It's been great diving deep with you too.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here.